Hey everyone, Piano Man Chuck, and I'm here today with the Kurzweil PC4. Brand new from Kurzweil, and boy was I surprised at the price when I saw everything that this could do. Let me just tell you briefly what this thing is. It's a stage piano. It's also a synthesizer. It's a sound creation tool. It is a workstation. It is a sequencer. And it's basically a keyboard for a keyboardist in a band, or it can be for a solo pianist. It wears a lot of hats, and it does them all pretty well. And the one thing I really always liked about Kurzweil is it's got these huge knobs and buttons. The pitch bend and the modulation wheel, as well as the data or the jog wheel over here, and all these buttons and knobs and sliders, they're all great, and they're all decent quality too. See, the only thing is these sliders, I just wish it had a little bit more friction. Otherwise, everything else here is perfect. Now, this has 4 gigabytes of memory broken down into 2 gigabytes of onboard memory for the samples that they have here, and 2 gigabytes of user memory. So for your own stuff, you've got a whopping 2 gigabytes of memory that you can store stuff into. It's got over 1,000 different programs that it comes with. And programs in this sense means instruments, voices, patches. Kurzweil likes to call it programs. Now, as far as pianos, it features a 9-foot German grand and a 7-foot Japanese grand. So here, this is the dynamic 9-foot grand that you just heard me playing on the opening. Alright, so let's try one of the other ones. Let's go to the rich 7-foot one. Alright, so here's a studio 7-foot grand. Let's go back to the 9-foot. Here's a recital 9-foot grand. So the pianos are really nice, and of course you can tailor how they sound to your own needs, and it's really, really good. So rather than get involved with all that right now, let's go over, we'll do a narrative on what all this is about here. I already mentioned that it has over 1,000 programs or patches or voices to it. It also has 256 note polyphony. And that is more than any previous Kurzweil using Kurzweil's V.A.S.T or V.A.S.T system. And V.A.S.T, of course, stands for Variable Architecture Synthesis Technology. And you can do so much with that, it's really deep. We'll briefly be touching on that a little bit later on. So in the meantime, like it says here, it's flash play. So you can actually load things really fast without any waiting time. So you can get from one thing to the other, and you can actually load your own programs and samples. Now it'll take WAV files, it'll take AIFF files, as well as some Kurzweil files. The P3K, the KRZ, K25, and K26 file extensions, all acceptable with this. Now, the V.A.S.T portion, which I just mentioned a second ago, it has 32 layers per program, and each one offers its own signal path and a whole host of modular DSP tools to go along with it. It's got a KB3 ToneReal organ, which basically, it's a drawbar organ, it is a tone wheel organ, and these sliders here are all the organ stops. So right there at your fingertips. And it's got a 88 note hammer action technology, and this one actually uses the Modwhl K6 action, which is really nice. I like it. So it's a nice refreshing break from the Fatar actions that they usually use. Now, because it's only 50 inches in length, even if you put this into a case, you should have plenty of room with this. It should be able to fit right in the back seat of your car. That's another nice thing. So to make that possible, the pitch bend modulation wheels are up here on the top. And a lot of people prefer them that way. Some people prefer them over at the end. I prefer them on top because it does make it not so long and easier to carry and easier to store and easier to transport. And this whole package is only 28.7 pounds. 28.7 pounds. Now that translates to 13 kilograms, and that is nothing for something that does all of this. So let's go through the I/O, or the inputs and outputs, here on the back panel. And we're going to start from this side and work our way over here. So follow along. We start out with a headphone jack that's 1/4 inch. Now you've got two pairs of audio outputs labeled A and B. And they're each, A is a left and a right 1/4 inch, and the B is also a left and right 1/4 inch. So basically you can configure this so that the B 1/4 inch outputs mirror the A's, or you can have it in your programming so that you're using all four as independent outputs. Very cool. There are very few keyboards I've seen that does that. So that opens up a whole new channel of creativity when you're using them as independent channels. And as far as the left and right A, it doesn't, but it can be configured to mimic standard keyboards, where if you're just putting in a left 1/4 inch cable to a single amplifier, then everything gets summarized down to mono. And if you don't do that, then you can have it the way it is, where even if you just have a left plugged in, it's just going to be the left, and the right is waiting for something else to be plugged in. And next to that, you've got a pair of left and right 1/4 inch audio inputs, which is really cool because that can go through the effects here. Then you've got 1/8 inch TRS line in. And you've got a ribbon controller jack for the optional ribbon controller that you can get from Kurzweil. Very cool. And then you've got your CC1 and CC2 1/4 inch pedal jacks. Now, CC stands for continuous controller. And the first one basically is used for expression or volume. And if you are using an organ, then that would be used as an organ swell instead. Then you've got your switch 1 and switch 2 pedal jacks. Switch 1 being used for sustain, and basically it supports half damping, so they really shouldn't call it a switch because it does support half damping pedals. I'm using a Korg DS1H half damper pedal with that, and it works just fine. Of course, you can use a lot of other half damper pedals with it too, and it'll work just fine. Okay, then on the other side, you've got your USB A and B jacks, which basically one can go to your computer or host, and the other one is for things like a flash memory or thumb drive or USB, other kind of storage. Then you've got a little knob that controls the brightness of the screen here, which is really cool, because you don't have to go fishing through menus to do that. Then you've got MIDI in and out, 5-pin DIN legacy MIDI jacks, which is really cool because a lot of different keyboard manufacturers now are starting to get away from that, and you usually don't find that anymore unless you go to the higher end boards, and this is a higher end board. Then you've got your DC input from your AC adapter and your power on and off. All right, now getting back to the switch 1 and switch 2. You can use a single switch pedal or a dual pedal, 2 pedals per jack using the 1/4-inch TRS plugs. So, in order to emulate the 3 pedals of an acoustic piano, use a single sustain pedal on switch 1, or half damper pedal on switch 1, and a dual pedal on switch 2. And that's how you emulate a standard 3-pedal piano setup. Alright, so now let's cover the top panel, all of the knobs, buttons, switches, sliders, and so on and so forth. Starting from the left and going over to the right. We'll do this as quickly as possible. Alright, so you've got your pitch bend and modulation. And what's really nice, I've always said this in the past, what's really nice about Kurzweil is all of these buttons and knobs and sliders and switches are big. There's no mistaking them. So unlike some of the other manufacturers that use these tiny little buttons and sliders and stuff, this is a perfect size for everybody, especially when you're on stage. It just makes it so much easier. The only gripe I have are these sliders. I could use just a little bit more friction. Other than that, it's perfect. So getting back to here, above the pitch bend and the modulation wheels, you've got your transpose buttons. So really nice to have that right on the front panel. You don't have to go through a menu to get to it. So, and they're in semitones. Now, no matter how high or low you've deviated from the note that you standard C, which is now an F, to get back to the default with no transpose, all you got to do is hit both of those at the same time, and now you are back in business. All right, next we've got your master volume, so you can control the volume of the whole instrument, and above that is a little button called variation. So no matter what you're playing, they put in a variation there. So right now I'm playing piano. And if I hit the variation button and turn it on, and it lights up, it's blue, like all the other buttons that when you turn it on, they light up. So listen to this. They decided to put a pad in there for variation. And of course, when I turn it off, I'm back to just the piano. And with this keyboard, nothing's carved in stone. You can change whatever the variation is. So if you don't want a pad, or if you want a different kind of pad, you can do that. Real easy. All right, next section over here is your control section, and all of these are programmable. And when you get into KB3 mode, which is their term for basically a drawbar or a ToneReal organ, these 9 sliders act as the organ stops, or as drawbars on the organ, which is really cool. One other thing I want to tell you about when you're in organ mode, let's just go to the organ right now. Okay, so when you're playing an organ, that variation button that I was talking about, that controls the rotary speed. So I pushed it, and now the rotary speed is faster, and when you have it off, the rotary speed is slower. All right, now getting back to the drawbars, we all know what these do, but watch. You can see the drawbars here as you move them. No matter what organ you've selected, the same holds true. So, very cool. And the buttons down here below that, the functions here, are written on top of them. So, basically, you've got your stops, of course, but you can turn on key click and pitch high and low, and decay fast or slow, or loud, soft, and so on and so forth. So a lot of control over here. Let's go back to a piano. All right, next you've got your, it's labeled channel slash layer slash zone slash track. So it's kind of serving a multi-purpose over here. But if you look over here in the right corner, you'll see MIDI channel 1. So if I increase this, you'll see MIDI channel 2. This is what's set to that. And of course you can change that. But basically if you're using this as a MIDI tool or device, and you want to send certain things out to certain MIDI channels, this is where you set that up. You can do that so easy over here. And next, you've got save and edit. So anytime you make a change, watch your save button here. Anytime you make a change here, like one of the knobs or sliders that you move, the save button lights up to let you know you've changed something. Is this what you want to save, or are you just doing it temporarily for now? So when that's lit up, it's to remind you that you've made some changes, and if you want to keep those changes, that's where you can go into the save menu and you can give it a different name and so on and so forth. Okay? So let's get out of there. This is an exit button. It's going to come in handy for you for a lot of different stuff. Then there's an edit button. So when you go into edit mode, you're presented with this screen here with a whole bunch of stuff. So these are parameters right here for pad and filter frequency and sostenuto and attack and release and stuff like that. And you can change all these real easy. You just use these cursor buttons to get to what you want to get to. Here's for like expression, and you go over here to that to adjust, make your adjustments, okay? So, as you can see, there's a lot here, and this is just the parameter category. It goes on and on and on and on. So, then we get to effects, all right? And this is where you can change effects. And if you hit edit while you're in the effects menu, you get to the effects chain. And you can do a lot of different stuff here. We're in the effects chain menu right now, and look at all these different things that you got available to you. It's just, and there's more buttons so you can get to even more stuff. What you see on the bottom here, that's the different things that you get to. And by the way, these 6 buttons here on the bottom, these are soft buttons. They're called soft buttons because they don't have dedicated function. They are software based. Depending on what screen you're in, the label for what these buttons do are written right here, and the lines are drawn here to show you what label is what. So if I go to the more button, now I've got more stuff that I can do, and these are the functions for the buttons now on this particular screen. Mod 1, Mod 2, Mod 3, effects low, and then there's another more. So here we can go to info and get all that. Exit out of there, and another more button, and all kinds of stuff. It's just amazing how much stuff is built into this. Now, we're barely scratching the surface of what's here today. So basically, it's a lot. All right, now let's exit out of there. Okay. And while I'm viewing this, this is one type of view. This is your standard view. This is showing me I'm on a dynamic 9-foot grand, which is basically a German grand. And a German grand is usually a Steinway. They also have a 7-foot grand, which is a Japanese grand, and those are usually Yamahas. Now, about these views, there's a button here called View. If I press it, it changes the view here to show me what I have. This is showing me basically favorites that are in here already. Okay? And if I press the view again, I get a totally different screen. This shows me what's coming next and what's coming before that. So I'm on the dynamic 9-foot grand right now, and it shows the next one is a bright jazz 9-foot. And notice how they tailored it so it would be more suitable for jazz. And here's a smooth grand 9-foot. And a RecitalGrand. Here's a concert piano. And a fierce 9-foot grand. And a punchy edge. So you get the idea. All these different pianos and all these different settings. It's really nice. Again, when we're going back to the control section, all of these knobs and buttons and sliders are completely programmable. You can do a lot of different stuff with it. But usually the default, at least for the piano, are these first 4 knobs are your EQ. And you have a lot more control over EQ if you want to go menu diving. But right here, for a shortcut, you've got bass or mid-range sweep, and then the mid-range control, and treble. So a lot of control over here. And the cursor buttons, left, right, up, down, kind of basically seeing how those work. And then your data or jog wheel, very easy. You can use it here. So instead of using these, I can get to something really quickly this way. Now, this is the mode buttons to select what mode you want. Right now, I'm in program mode. Now again, Kurzweil uses the term program where other manufacturers use terms like patch or instrument or voice or tone. They all mean the same thing. So program mode here means basically instrument mode. This is where all your presets are coming from. So 2 gigabytes of memory of presets and you're good to go. And since you can do so much editing, you have another 2 gig of memory for user memory. So basically in program mode, you've got 12 buttons over here to narrow down the categories. I mean, you've got over 1,000 different instruments or programs in here. So to make it a little easier to narrow it down to, we're in the piano category now, and there's a lot of different pianos in here. Notice how they're in blue. There's 42 different ones. This last one is a dream piano. All right. That's that studio grand 7-foot, and here's a rich grand 7-foot. Alright, so enough about the piano category. Let's go to the next category, which is electric piano. And there's so much here. Tube electric pianos and everything. So they give you a clue as to what the organ sounds like, or the electric piano sounds like, by the name. The name here of what I was just playing is These Eyes. And you can see, you can pretty much guess what it's going to sound like just from the names alone. Alright, next category, clavinets. So we got a lot of different clavinets here too. There's probably a better one for that. So you just have to play around with it to get to the one that you like, whatever's going to sound good for you. And getting to organs, we had a sample already. Now, I'm not really an organ player, but any patch or instrument or program, as they call it, you can demo that or audition it. You don't have to be able to play it. Basically, down here, these two middle buttons in the category section that's labeled Program Demo, you just press them both at once. So now we got a demo of the big rotary B3. Alright, very cool here. So, actually, this is showing me what lies ahead. And if I change the view back, I kind of like this view better because it shows me the drawbar positions and everything else. And what I have up here on the top, it shows MIDI stuff. So, lots of different kind of organs over here. Strings. And again, lots of different strings. So if I change the view, you're going to get an idea of all the different kinds of strings we've got here. All kinds of stuff. And again, when you look at the names, you're going to get an idea of what some of them sound like just by the names, because it kind of triggers a memory of a part of a song name or a verse in the song or whatever. All right, so what's next? Pads, of course, lots of pads. It's an evolving pad. And of course, there's a synth section. Here's one labeled Jump OBXG. I wonder what that sounds like. So you get an idea, as I've been saying, of what things sound like just by looking at the names. And it's so many. I've got over 1,000. I could spend a whole day making a video that goes through all of these and probably not even be done with it. All right, brass and wind. And again, that's probably not the right one, but just to show you what some of these things sound like. And of course, a lot of these are velocity based, so if I'm playing it like this, well, and if I apply more pressure, all right, ensembles. Well, yeah, here's one that's labeled Vivaldi, so Four Seasons comes into mind. Hybrids, that's an interesting one. Guitar and bass. Here's a steel string. And again, you can always audition it by pressing the program demo, these two keys together. Okay. And drums. There is so many different drum kits here. Here's a Los Angeles kit. Here's a drum and bass. Full room kit. Alright, now let me just get back to the piano really quick. I want to show you something else. This is a really cool thing. Now, when you hit piano, you automatically are taken to the first thing in the piano category. In this instance, it's the dynamic 9-foot grand. So let's say you don't want that. Let's say you want a different piano. Let's try this concert piano. All I have to do is hold that. All right, now I got a message that that's now the default. So if I go to something else, clearly I'm no longer in the piano category. But the next time I press piano, now my default piano is concert piano. And you can do that with any of the categories here. Just pick a category, pick an instrument within it, and then hold that category button until you get the message that that's now your new default. All right, so let me just get back to my standard view here. All right, and you'll notice that you've got, octave down, octave up. You can shift entire octaves. And then you got splits and layers, and those are really cool to set up. All right, so let me get into splits and layers. If I hit split, look at this. I've got a layout here of 4 different tones or programs that I can use, and I can set where on the keyboard range that I want to have this. Unlike other keyboards where you've got a split point and you might be able to set where that split point is, and everything to the left is one program and everything to the right is another. With this, you can actually overlap it. So right now, I've got a bass on the bottom, and on here, I've got a piano. Now, here's the cool part. You can change whatever program you want, and the cool part here is, let me go over here to show where the keyboard is. Look at this. I can overlap. So I got bass down here until they overlap. Now I have both. Now I have just piano. Alright, so that's a very cool feature, very powerful. You can come up with some really nice multis with that. Now if I go back to my standard screen, there's also a layer section. So if I hit that, that's very similar. Now they're showing everything where each one of the instruments takes up the full 88, but you don't have to have it that way. You can do exactly what I just did in the split section. So the two of them are very, very similar. Oh, let's exit out of there. Now if I go to the multi section, this is where your layers come in. Something as easy as what I just showed you. You can set up and put it into a multi section. And of course, you have 2 gigabytes of memory to create all kinds of multis. 4 layers. And again, if you use the sequencer, you can go more. Song mode. Okay, so now in the sequencer section, I'm creating a new song. And let me just go through this real quick. Track 1 here, track status is R for record, so I've got that armed. And before I do that, I don't like to have a metronome. So for me, just for this demo, I want to turn that off. so no metronome. And we have armed the first track, and that is set up as a classic B3. I don't want that. I want a piano. Okay. Go to record, and let's start. All right, let's stop that. Let's go back and go to the next track. Actually, we're going to set this to P for playback. We're going to go to the next track, set that up for arming, and let's change the piano to something else. Let's make it an electric piano. Okay, that's good for this demo. And let's go ahead and get started with that. All right, now let's go back and let's set this for, we can set M for mute or P for playback, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the next, whoops, I'm going to go to the next track and set that up R for record. And let me go up here and change what that is. And let's go to maybe a guitar. For this demo, let's try that. So record, get started. All right, so that's all three of them together. It's very cool. So from there, you can save it, you can add more stuff, you can edit, and for each one of these, you can specify where you like it in the mix. Each instrument can be panned to the left, can be panned to the right. You can change the volume of each one. In fact, one of the selections here is a mixer. So here's where you can actually change the panning and the mix levels and all that kind of stuff. This is showing you tracks 1 through 8. And if you press the 9 to 16 button, you'll get tracks 9 to 16. So this is very, very cool stuff here. The last button down here is global mode. Now global mode, this is where you can do a lot of stuff. And the one gripe I have about this piano, most pianos, most digital pianos, you want to be able to change the keyboard touch with the velocity. And basically if you walk up to a piano and, let me just go back to piano. Okay. And you don't like it, it's too light, you want a heavier feel. Or maybe it's too heavy and you want a lighter feel. So the one thing I don't like about this is that you have to go into global mode and then into the main 2 and get to the velocity map right there. And that's where you can change it from light to hard, linear, all that kind of stuff. I believe there's about 10 different settings here. And I like the light 1 setting. But the problem is, unless you know that, it's going to be hard to figure out where that is. Okay? And because this has aftertouch, the next one, the pressure map, that's where you can set how much pressure you need for aftertouch. You can set it to easy, or easier, or easiest, or hard, or harder, or hardest, or linear, and so on and so forth. Okay? And then your intonation map. But those two things, I would prefer that to be a little bit more obvious as to how to get to that. So if you're going to go into your retailer to try one of these things out, you might get the wrong opinion about how this key action is because you don't know where to go to change it or if it even is changeable. So that's the one thing. If there's one thing that I don't like, that's it. Okay, other than that, it's perfect. Then you can get to the effects section over here, and this is where you can control all your EQ. It's all laid out for you right here, and your master effects, and your compressor, and all that. So you could actually master with this. And this is where you can store and load stuff from USB. Like I said, there's a USB thumb drive that you can put into here. And you got objects and samples, and mixer. This is where you control a lot of stuff with the mixer. This is pretty much self-explanatory. Right. And one other cool thing about this, there's a special section called Tools that you can get to from anywhere. If you press these two middle buttons, no matter where you are, never mind what they're labeled up here, there's 6 buttons. If you press the middle 2 at the same time, you're taken into this tool section, this global tool section. And you can see MIDI out. I'm pressing the pedal. I'm playing stuff here. I'm pressing the expression pedal. So there's a lot of stuff that you can see here, and what's coming in, if anything, through MIDI, and the state, voices, about gives you a whole like ending credits, like you're watching a movie or something like that. So anyway, this is really cool stuff. Okay, one other cool thing that I wanted to go over when you're in program mode is, like I said, there's over 1,000 different samples here. And you know you want a particular type of horn, you just don't know which one it is, and you don't want to fish through all kinds of stuff, so you can actually search for it. So basically, what you do is you hold down the Enter key and hit 1 or 2 or 3, any of the 9. So I'm going to do Enter and 1, and I'm presented with a search screen here. So I'm going to use this jog wheel to get to the letters that I want. I'm going to type H for the first one for horn, go to the next one and type O, then R, and N. Okay, then I'm going to press Enter. All right, so I've got high-end horns here. And if I want to know the next one, I'm going to hold Enter and go next. Dynamic French horns, and next. A lead French horn, and so on and so forth. So these are all the horns. Now that search is saved into Enter and 1. If I want a different search, and I want to keep that search in here, I'll go Enter and 2. And now I can do another type of search, and let's just say key, just for the sake of anything in here. Okay, and Enter. There's key right there. I'll hold Enter, Enter and go next. Soft bell keys, everything with the word key in it. All right, so that's cool. Now, watch this. If I hold Enter and go back to 1, there's my first search term. And if I go to 2, there's my second search term. So I can have up to 9 in here. You do lose these when you turn the power off, but it's a really cool way of having things going through and searching for things rather quickly. And I haven't touched on these yet. There's an arpeggiator here. You can change the tempo. And again, there's a lot in the arpeggiator section. In fact, I think you have up to 16 different arpeggiators, which is really cool. And when you hit latch, you don't have to hold anything down. It just keeps going. All right, so that's very cool too. And you can tap the tempo into here too, like a lot of keyboards offer that these days. All right, now, again, when you go into program mode like we are in now, and we hit Edit, and we go more and more, then we get to something called ALG, that's algorithm. And when we press algorithm, this is the V.A.S.T section, V-A-S-T, remember that? Variable architecture synthesis technology. That is really something. It's very, very, very deep, and this is where you get into that. Okay, I'm not going to touch on that because that's a whole nother classroom altogether. But this is really powerful stuff. And you can create sounds here that you've never heard before. So that's really cool too. So let's get out of here. And now let's just try a couple different things. We've heard a lot of the piano, but if I go into the organ section, and there was one in particular, it was 197, and I can save this kind of stuff too, but fold again organ. Well, you can tell by the name of it what it's going to sound like. So it does the wah for you and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of automated like that. I prefer to do it manually myself, but for those who want to do it this way, it's a great way to play that song. Half of it is done for you. You just have to know what notes to hold down and when to change notes and all that kind of stuff. Still a lot of work, but it's probably easier than doing it manually the way I do it. And when you get to Zombie B3, you think of the zombies, you know, it's the time of the season. So that's what you would use for that. Maybe it was an octave lower. Another one here. This will probably bring back some memories to people. In a Garden of Eden, they're calling it. So you'll know that one. And they've got all the drawbar settings for you set to the right place. That's really cool. There's Animals organ. That's the section for House of the Rising Sun. Chapel organ. And if we go to strings, one here was at 284. And notice how the background changes depending on what category I've now entered the string category. So the background has changed. Here was a nice one here that I like, bass and violins. Then there's Proper Pizzicato. So anyway, when you get into these different categories and sounds, you can see how it inspires you to come up with something. Just now, I was starting to come up with a track on my own, but let's go on with the demo because this I can always play with. And boy, once you sit down here and get inspired, it just doesn't end. Yeah, Fast Mix Octaves. Fast Tremolo. And there's like things that sound like a mellotron here. And here's one over here which I found kind of interesting. Synbrass Pillow. Check out the bass on this. And this is in a pad section. And this one you've already heard me do. 495. Jump. Funkenstein, let's see. That would be like Frankenstein, maybe? These are just things that I found interesting. Strawberry flutes. That would be like maybe Strawberry Fields. Vivaldi Orchestra. I think I've already tried this one. Percussion attack string. Broadway Backup. Here's an interesting one. Let's try that again with a Real Nylon. Nice bass. Now this drum kit over here, I like this last key here. That's so cool. Here's another one with a cool key on the left. How cool is that? Listen to this. You can have fun with this all day long. Vocal percussion. Well, anyway, you can see how you can pretty much get lost in this. You can do so much with this. This is a whole production station. And like I said in the beginning, it's for everybody. Whether you're a sound design person, or you're just a keyboardist in a band, or a solo pianist, or anything. Anything. This is just so much to it. And the price, 1,995 US dollars, which I found was quite excellent for something that does all of this. So for more information, go onto my website, pianomanchuck.com, and I hope this has been helpful for you. Until then, Piano Man Chuck, peace out. Thanks for watching.